What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I couldn't be more excited to present to all of you our biggest panel episode yet, featuring the team from Inside the Boys Club, an exciting and important project and movement blossoming in the UK and beyond. We're blessed to have a lot of the team on board today's episode, so let me introduce you all to, in no particular order, Dr. Naomi Murphy, former podcast guest Daniel, Rafael Viola, Joseph Sabian, and Toby Tarquin. In a world where shadows of childhood trauma linger like unspoken storms, our revolutionary movement emerges from the ashes of pain. Introducing Inside the Boys Club. Born from raw courage and unyielding vision, this is no ordinary initiative. It's a beacon of hope, a thunderclap against the epidemic of sexual abuse that has silenced boys and men for generations. Imagine 5 warriors, survivors from diverse backgrounds, uniting their voices in a symphony of resilience, amplified by visionary creators and experts. This is their story, a gripping tale of survival, solidarity, and transformation that demands your attention and ignites your spirit. It all ignited in 2025, sparked by a whirlwind collaboration that fate couldn't ignore. Andy Woodward, part of the project, who isn't here today, the trailblazing whistleblower who shattered the football world's illusions in 2016, had spent 9 relentless years exposing the hidden horrors of abuse. I ended up meeting Naomi, and we hooked up together, and we were talking about solutions for the future, Andy recalls. Enter Dr. Naomi Murphy, a clinical powerhouse and co-host of the Locked Up Living podcast, whose mission is to unpack the harsh realities of institutional life and foster growth from trauma. What began as a simple idea, could we make it safer for men and boys to speak about sexual abuse and to be heard with dignity, evolved into striking portraits, deep bonds, and short films that capture raw humanity without sensationalism. At the heart of the Boys Club stands its fearless team, Andy Woodward, who we mentioned earlier, Rafael Viola, Joe Sabian, Toby Tarquin, and Daniel, men forged in the fires of adversity, each from different arenas, yet bound by a shared scar. Andy, the football prodigy turned advocate, exposed predators in positions of power, revealing how vulnerability is preyed upon in sports. Rafael, a survivor of 1960s children's homes run by the Catholic Church, endured years of torment as a child, emerging as a warrior who traveled to the Vatican twice, only to be shunned. Joe, with his background in mental health, speaks of emotional inarticulacy and the maladjusted coping strategies that lead to isolation, suicide, and shattered lives. Toby, co-founder of the Seen and Heard group for boarding school survivors, draws chilling parallels. Quote, young children put into positions where they have adults who have huge influence and control over them. That's so interwoven into the fabric of society. And Daniel, a ritual abuse survivor and former podcast guest, who reclaimed his voice at 40 after dissociated memories were surfaced, emphasizes reclaiming agency. He says, to speak out about your story is to reclaim your voice and to reclaim your authentic power. This isn't just a project, it's a global epidemic's antidote. Boys comprise at least 1/3 of sexual abuse victims, with over 150,000 potentially facing it in the next year alone. Yet men often wait decades to disclose, burdened by shame, fear, and societal mandates like grow a pair or boys don't cry. Inside the Boys Club shatters these chains, highlighting homelessness, addiction, suicide attempts, and relational wreckage as the hidden costs. The list goes on and on, Rafael laments, but the group flips the script. We're not alone anymore. Through portraits that imprint hope and videos that offer a positive edge, they show survivors can emerge stronger with post-traumatic growth, gaining insight, compassion, and empathy that fuels their fight. The mission, to raise awareness, foster healing, and build a movement without ceilings. It's about being a beacon of hope for other men. Let's encourage men to talk, Joe urges. Beyond justice, often elusive amid cover-ups and sluggish systems, they champion speaking up for the self-respect and healing. This is an essential part of one's healing journey, Daniel asserts. Looking ahead, the Boys Club pulses with momentum. Mission 1, The incredible images and films is complete, a blueprint for expansion. And future plans include things like annual men's events to unite survivors, sharing resources, and holding institutions accountable, churches, schools, sports clubs, and more. Make it big, make it loud, and make it terrifying for people who perpetuate these crimes, Joe vows. Collaboration is key, linking with groups like Seen and Heard, growing organically through stories, podcasts, and tools for schools and workplaces. We're inviting, the project declares, add your voice, stories, videos, podcasts, and resources. Help us grow so we can expand this movement. In a society that once prioritized women and children first, leaving men adrift, Inside the Boys Club demands a platform. These incredible men, smiling through the storm, prove adversity breeds unbreakable bonds and profound humanity. They're not victims, they're visionaries rewriting the narrative. Join them, speak, be believed, pass it on. The silence ends here, and the revolution is just beginning. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest panel of honor. And let's go inside the Boys Club. Welcome, everybody. It is such an honor to have all of you guys on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you.
I am so happy to do this panel with you guys. I heard of this project through Daniel, and people watching my podcast and who have religiously will recognize him. I saw Daniel posting some updates about stay tuned for this amazing project I'm doing. And then he announced it, and I was just absolutely blown away. You know, as Dr. Naomi will talk about in a moment, there's a really forgotten part of the survivor movement that just isn't talked about enough, and that is the male child sexual abuse and the implications that this can have lifelong for men and little boys, you know, and how this isn't talked about enough. And it's so incredibly powerful seeing groups of men come together. We have no shortage of women coming together, but there's a big shortage of men who are not just speaking out, but actually forming bonds together and coming together. And this sets a really, really powerful example for our community. So I thought I'd start off by handing the mic over to Dr. Naomi Murphy, which I'm really excited for all of you to meet. She was part of the conception of this project, and I thought maybe you could walk us through who you are, Dr. Naomi, a little bit about your background, how you got into working with survivors and caring about this demographic of people. And we could sort of paint the big picture of what Inside the Boys Club is. And then we can start breaking down the details of how all of your incredible stories, testimonies, and what you all have overcome, all of you incredible men here today, to help form this movement that is and is going to continue to change lives.
Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us such a warm welcome and also lending us your platform. And I think one of the things that will come up at some point during the conversation is how hard it is for male voices to get heard. Actually, I don't think it's any coincidence that I'm here speaking about this group, and it's a female who's lent her platform to be able to tell this story. But I'm a consultant clinical and forensic psychologist, and I spent over 20 years working in a high secure prison for men with people who were seen as untreatable psychopaths. And I got quite tired of hearing repeatedly, not so much about we'd hear a lot about women and their histories. Women prisoners have got histories of trauma, which absolutely is true. But the comparison was always made with male prisoners, that women were different because their histories were traumatic, whereas men were just there because they were bad. And my experience of working with men was that actually their histories were just as traumatic. And, you know, had many, many stories of all sorts of childhood trauma. But one of the facts that really stood out, which seemed to be very unknown, was we did an audit of the men in our project and found 66% of them had experienced sexual abuse during childhood. And of those 66%, 52% had been sexually abused by a woman. And whenever I presented that data at conferences, people would always ask, how do you know they're not lying? Which quite shocked me, to be honest, because I don't think anyone would ask that question if I'd been talking about women. So I felt quite passionate about trying to articulate what the history of male prisoners is like, and notice that, you know, also ordinary men within the population, they also find it very hard to be heard. It's not necessarily that men are always unwilling to speak up, but actually even when they do, we're perhaps not willing to listen to those stories. And I connected with Andy Woodward, who was the former professional soccer player, and I invited him onto the podcast I host, The Locked Up Living, thinking he's got a really inspirational story of having a horrendous history of sexual abuse in childhood, but speaking up to try and do something to prevent that from happening and clean up sport. And we both met the award-winning photographer Sane7, and must really give thanks to Sane7 and her business partner, Marius, because they met Andy and they really wanted to do something to platform this issue. And what's really amazing is Sane7's photography. She's known for challenging inequality, gender inequality in relation to women. And of course, she met Andy and she was horrified to hear some of the details about the amount of male abuse that also happens. And the project came from that, actually. And we reached out to a number of men. We wanted to depict the fact that actually this is so prevalent within our society, and reached out to try and gather a cohort of men who were brave enough to be visible faces for the campaign. The amazing thing is most of these men didn't know each other before the campaign started, and you've touched on seeing a project where there's this community, this camaraderie that spins up. And absolutely, it's such a privilege to be in a WhatsApp group with these guys, offering so much love and support to one another, encouragement, lifting each other up. I would just like to mention the fact that, because I think it's very obvious that we have 5 men of a certain age, they're all white. This isn't because we did try to get Black and Asian men, because we know they exist. I've certainly worked with them myself, male survivors who are from other ethnic backgrounds. And I think there is something about the fact that it takes men a long time to have the courage to speak up, but also white men would be seen, certainly within Britain, as having more social power than men from Black and Asian groups. And actually, maybe it's been slightly less risky for white men to have put their faces to this campaign. So yeah, that's how the project emerged. So thank you very much for hosting us.
You are so welcome. And I want to hand the mic back to you in a moment, Naomi. There's a lot of really shocking facts and statistics that you have put together and that you talk about in your podcast with this group and this project in particular. But I thought before we do that, maybe we could go around and give each of these incredible men an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then we can sort of have a roundtable conversation about these statistics, about this project, and of course, highlighting all of you as individuals, because all of you have just, I mean, it blows me away seeing how anybody with what you guys have went through has come out and done things that people with no trauma haven't done. I mean, I know so many people who have writing a book on their bucket list who didn't go through what you guys did, and they don't do it. And it's just amazing to see the odds that you guys have overcome, how you guys have taken the skills that you've learned from survival, and you guys are able to implement them into overcoming, again, things that can be really impossible for a lot of people to even wrap their minds around, like writing a book or starting an organization or speaking out on a podcast or creating a podcast. So I'm just really excited to highlight all of you. I think it gives people hope to see that. And this is just, you know, it's a really incredible step for other male survivors, especially, to see. So I'm just going to go no particular order here. I'm just going to go how you guys are on my screen. I'm going to start with Toby, since he's next to Naomi on here. So Toby, I'm going to hand the mic to you if you want to share a little bit about yourself and your and Seen and Heard especially also.
Well, thank you very much. No pressure on me being first, but there we go. I'm Toby, obviously. I've spent most of my sort of adult working life as a teacher in various sort of levels of education in the UK and around the world. And a lot of it was spent in prestigious private schools here in the UK. Apart from occasions when it all got too much and I sort of dipped out. I came to sort of suddenly becoming vaguely sort of public when I started writing books, and I was forced into that. You were saying how many people don't bother, they have on their bucket list to write a book and never do it. I had no choice, really. My sort of working life came to a very abrupt end when I suffered kidney failure, which meant that I had 4 hours, 3 times a week fixed to a dialysis machine in a hospital. Okay. And I was in shock that I'd become ill because I'd never had anything wrong with me ever before. I was in shock because suddenly I wasn't working, which made me feel like a total failure because I had nothing. I was my work, which sounds really stupid looking back, but that's how I saw myself. And I had nothing to do for 4 hours. So eventually I would come home complaining. I wouldn't complain about the pain of dialysis. I'd be complaining if I moved, the machine sounded gongs, and so I was sort of trapped for 4 hours. And that was my 3 times a week complaint to my poor wife and kids. I think probably to shut me up, my wonderful wife told me, well, you should write a book. You're always telling us funny stories, write them. So I did. I couldn't do it properly because one arm had to be completely smooth. So I was doing with one finger typing on my laptop for 4 hours. I ended up writing about 3 books in the space of a year, all of which are published on Amazon under the name of Toby Tarquin. And quite a few more have followed. It's become a kind of habit. So I was forced into it. It's not because I'm clever or heroic or diligent. It was sort of nothing else to do sort of mode. Part of the process of becoming ill was for me to have time to sort of realize what a bad time I'd had myself as a child in a very, very privileged circumstances of private school education from the age of 8 through to 18. And as I thought about it more, I realized that, I'd been working in those environments as a teacher myself, and I'd watched and seen the effect it had on other children, whether they were abused or not. Being sent away from your parents at the age of 8 is a kind of abuse in itself, because you get separation trauma. You're not big enough to be left on your own. And that always used to bother me. And it bothered me that as a member of staff, believe me, it sounds dreadful, I wanted to be able to comfort them. You can't, especially as a man, you can't go and put an arm around an 8-year-old child who's crying. You can't do that. You have to keep your distance, say, oh, please don't cry. It doesn't do what's needed. They need their mum or their dad or somebody who's allowed to legitimately do that to comfort them. And there's none of that human comfort. There is no human contact of an appropriate kind. And to be devoid of that from the age of 8 in itself is an abuse and damages people. Once I was very fortunate, I had a kidney transplant, so no more dialysis. I was thinking I'd go back to work, but then COVID came. So I had another enforced year of nothing. And it was in that time that I first joined social media. I sort of started finding things on Facebook and things. And I found this group about other people who'd suffered in boarding school, which intrigued me. And I spent 3 days solidly reading what people had written on there. And I was really shocked. People much older than me, and tragically, people as young as 18, so still in the system, were telling horrible stories, all of which sounded just like mine. And so I was shocked that other people, anyone else in the world, had experienced what I had. And even more shocked that they still were in just about every school that exists. And as a result of that, I ended up joining 2 other guys from there. We decided we wanted to use our combined experience to try and change things a bit. Hence, we formed 18 months ago the not-for-profit organisation Seen and Heard, specifically for people from independent schools, day and boarding, to be able to talk, to be able to get help We offer lots of sort of free help. We have directories of special counsellors and people who are experienced in our particular sort of area, so who are more likely to understand. And we've taken on a sort of campaigning role, and we've recently launched Seen and Heard for Schools to actually help schools to change themselves. And I'm sort of leading on that since I know about schools and have spent most of my life working in them. I go in and sort of do an audit, help people to see what needs to change, practical ways that they can do it without spoiling their unique school ethos in a sympathetic way. So that's me. That's Seen and Heard. Please buy one of my books.
And where can they find your books?
They're all on Amazon, self-published things. If you look under Toby Tarquin author, you'll find them. They're all there.
Okay, I'll have that linked in the show notes. And then Toby does have his website written here on the screen. But if you're listening on a platform and you don't see it, it's seenheard.org.uk, and you guys can visit him there. And so next, I'm going to pass it on to Daniel, who has been on this podcast multiple times. So he'll probably be a familiar face for some of you. But Daniel, if you want to give some background on your story, talk about Survivor's story, incredible project that you're working on outside of this, and anything else that you want to share about yourself and the things that you're doing now.
Great. Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My background is primarily security and military focused. So that's what most of my working life consisted of. And then when I was 40, so several years ago now, I underwent alternative therapy. And as a result of this alternative therapy, I recovered memories of horrific and ritualized childhood sexual abuse as a boy. Now, this totally changed my life in good and in bad ways. I ended up losing everything as a result, but I regained myself, you could say. I did end up becoming mentally unwell because the severity of the abuse was just so horrific that I did sort of tailspin off with it. So I've been through the system. I've been through I was hospitalized for a while. So it's been quite a journey. It's been really quite a journey. And I think it's actually quite common for when memories do get recovered, that mental health, ill health can follow as a result, because it is so distressing and it is so discombobulating, really. So I hope if there's anyone else out there that may be in a similar position, that there's a bit of resonance there for you. And I guess my particular kind of note that I like to mention with these podcasts is we talk a lot about why men don't come forward and talk about their abuse for, big boys shouldn't cry, this kind of toxic masculinity kind of conditioning that people are subjected to that means that men feel a lot of pressure not to speak out. But the other side of it that I like to talk about is that the reason that a lot of people don't talk about it is because memories can be repressed, and sophisticated predators are very good at invoking disassociation in their victims. So they have effectively handbooks with best practices that they pass among themselves, and they know if they start abusing a child at a particular age, they do particular practices on this child, then the child is not going to remember the abuse. And if they do recall it, it'll be much later in life, and it's often with other confusing phenomena around the abuse, which means it's very unlikely that the abuse victim is going to be believed as a result of their disclosures. So that's really my drum that I like to bang. But yeah, and then my project is Survivor's Story, so survivors-story.com. And this really is a project with blog posts, with resources and information about the phenomena of childhood sexual abuse and ritualistic abuse. And really, it's just there to be offered as a resource for survivors. I think the resource page in particular is superb and goes into things around split personality syndrome and disassociation and just other general aspects of CSA as well. So I think it's a wonderful resource. That's basically what it is, but it's one of my babies that I work on in my spare time.
And Daniel has a article on there that I've posted to my social media labeled "Pedophiles No Dissociation Do You?" And I think that's a really great article for everybody to read. And I'm going to have Daniel's website linked below as well for you guys to go check out. And I'll link his playlist for the other episodes that he's done on this podcast, sharing his testimony. We've even went through some of his blog posts and his art that he's done that is on his website. So I'm really glad to have you back, Daniel, and really just so proud of you to see where your journey's taken you. So next, I'm going to bring up Rafael. Hello, darling. Hi.
Good evening. Good evening, all. Yeah, my name's Rafael Viola. I was born in Scotland, Glasgow. We moved down from Glasgow in 1969. I was 9 years of age. I think I was a clever little boy. Well, just a normal happy-go-lucky little boy. Moved into England, and within 6 months, I was put into a children's home called Crown Court. It's for severely retarded children. I was misdiagnosed. I spent 16 months at that place. I ran off several times. I tried to commit suicide at the age of 10. I got moved from there. I ended up in 5 children's homes. Every one of these children's homes, 5 children's homes, are notorious. The police were involved, allegations of murder, rapes, torture. Well, priests did go to jail for raping children. Nuns got investigated for murder. 5 brutal places. Well, I left there, and I complained many a times to the authorities. Telling me about the seriousness of the abuse that I had. Nobody believed me. Well, they didn't want to believe me. So all through my adult life, it's been terrible. I've been to prison. I've been an alcoholic. I've been drug abuse, homelessness, suicide, 2 attempts at suicide, self-harming, lived on the streets. Then, and about 15 years ago, my wife passed away. And all of a sudden, I had a triple bypass, I had a heart problems, had a triple bypass. And I thought about my children. I had to step up. Right? And I don't know what happened. I just changed. And I got involved with the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. That lasted 8 years. It cost £250 million. So we never got ahead of that inquiry, the survivors. So I ended up kicking off with the inquiry and demanding our voices. We got denied our voices at that inquiry. There's 20 recommendations were put into the government from that inquiry. Mandatory reporting, this is a massive thing we've got to sort out, and the redress scheme. So what I'm saying, when I got approached by Naomi, she asked me about this project, and I was so excited, because I've got a T-shirt. I've done everything. I've done it, the theory and the practical and the theory. So I've been involved in inquiries. I've been involved with these children's homes, and I ended up being a whistleblower. I wrote a book. My book's called Stealing Lives. It tells you all the cover-ups, because there is these big organisations. This is who I'm going after. Like they don't care about survivors. They only care about protecting the reputations. Right? And as I said, I've been to the Vatican twice. I've been to Westminster Cathedral. I've been to Birmingham Archdiocese. But these organisations are still not listening to us. They're still silencing us. Like, but what I do now, I like going out and talking to survivors. Because as I says, I've been there, I've seen it, I've got a T-shirt, and I can relate to these survivors. Right? And I just like going out and spreading the word and telling them we're not alone. And as he says, growing up with all this, I couldn't tell my siblings that I was at a special school. Like, in the 60s, it was a stigma. Well, the stigma now it's different now. But in them, I know my brothers, my sisters saying, or my friends, or where's Ralph? They say, oh, he's in the loony bin, or he's in the nut house. So I couldn't even tell my family that, like, no, that I was in a special school, because that's a stigma. So I grew up with so many stigmas, like, no, alcohol, drugs, like, no, and you're right. I couldn't say to people, oh, look, I've got abused. But when you come from rough neighbourhoods, you can't say that in rough neighbourhoods because, right, no, you're marked for life then. Like, no, if I went as a kid and told my friends, oh, yeah, like, no, I'm classed as severely retarded. By the way, I wasn't severely retarded. I was misdiagnosed when I went to another hellhole assessment centre. And they ought to come to the education department asking questions. And they rocked back and said I was misdiagnosed. I wasn't misdiagnosed. We were commodities. We were commodities. Our children were commodities in them days. They used us as commodities. They said I was severely retarded so they could get more money for us. Like, no, yeah, but as I says, this stigma has got to stop. Like, no, where people say, oh, I don't want to talk about it, Ralph. Grow up here, man up. Oh, that happened a long time ago. But things are changing because, I'm on the front line. I speak to a lot of people. You can see all my little videos. I go everywhere and I talk to people. And people begin to understand, like, no, there is a big problem with boys getting abused at a very young age. And as Naomi says, there's over 150,000 boys in the UK every year get abused. That's terrible. And you know something, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. When I say 150,000, like, you can add another 50,000 or another 150,000 because we don't come forward to 20 or 30 years later. Like, no. So as I says, I'm proud to be a part of this because I think with my knowledge, I can contribute something to this. And I'm really looking forward, and I really, really want to help because there's got to be a change. Boys, men, mental health, it does matter. No, it does matter. No, it's horrible when you have to grow up as a child, like with all these nightmares, everything that's happening. And the best thing, the best therapy that I've got, that it does me, is speaking about it. And when I speak to other survivors, they're the same. Like, no, I get messages all the time. Rafael, I've been to the police. I've done this. I've done that. Thanks. Like, no, once you speak to them and once it's awareness gets out there, people will listen. People will listen. That our mental health does matter. Like, no, and it's got to stop. 150,000 children, boys, a year in the UK getting abused. It's not right. This is supposed to be a civilized country. Far from it. Far from it.
Absolutely horrific. And Rafael, we're also grateful that you're a part of this. And for people watching, Rafael is really active on social media. He's an incredible person to follow, along with carrying his own story. He's always posting and uplifting other survivors, posting articles, posting things that uplift our community. And I'd really encourage you guys to go follow him. I'll have his links below. And then also he did mention he does have a book that he wrote called Stealing Lives. And where can people find your book, Rafael?
You can get it on Amazon. It's on most of the major platforms. Amazon, you know, a lot of people go on Amazon. It's
Okay.
yeah, that's it here. I can show you. That's me on the front cover. A little boy. That's what the day is. A little boy. Right, no. When I left in hellholes, 16. Well, I took 2 overdoses. I took one at 10.5. And I went to St Gilbert's. When I was there, I was about 13.5, 14. I took another overdose there. And my father was ill. Because that's what they do, these big organisations. They pick on the vulnerable. Now, my mum is Spanish. She can't speak English. Right? My father was ill, seriously ill. He passed away when he was 45, when I was still in care. Right? So I kicked off, screamed to get, because I wanted to go home. To look after my mum. And I was 15.5 then, so I spent 6 months education at the comprehensive school that I should have went to before I went into the children's homes. Well, I had no qualifications or nothing like that. And I was, well, classed as severely retarded. I went in the coal mines at 16. I know my sister, she was the same. My sister was put into care, and she was classed as severely retarded as well. Now, my sister, she was a single parent mother. She had 4 children. She had an accident and near enough spent 20 years in hospital. And from her hospital bed, she sent 3 of her children, one to St Andrews University, one to Cambridge University, and one to Keele University. Like, no, and she had a terrible life as well. My sister, abused in care. Right, that's what these organised, they pick on the vulnerable. My dad was seriously ill. My mum couldn't speak Spanish, and you know why? Because we were poor. We were poor. That was all. That was the reason. Easy targets. Easy targets. That's what we were in them days. So I just want to say that. Right, no,
Absolutely horrific. They're crimes against humanity. You guys are crime victims. You know, we call you guys survivors. It's a more uplifting term, you know, and I love our survivor community that we all have, you know, but at the heart of it, you guys are crime victims, and it's horrific what all of you have been through. And I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about that, Rafael. I'm excited to have you on for your own podcast episode and to dive more into your book. So I'm going to have your links below, and then I'm going to pass the mic to you, Joe, if you want to introduce yourself, share about your background and what you're working on now. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me on. And incidentally, I've got, it appears, very red cheeks. I haven't. It must be my camera. It looks like I've been drinking lots of cider before coming on, but I really haven't. My story. I went into care when I was 7.5, in a children's home called Grafton Close, which was in London. That was the first of 2. Prior to that, and the reason for me going into care was I had a very what we would probably know now as a narcissistic mother, incredibly violent, with a female partner, which was probably quite uncomfortable for her at the time. And I think it was quite clear that as her child, I wasn't wanted. That I was getting in the way of their relationship, and so they did most everything to. There was lots of abuse, lots of violence for a sustained period of time, until eventually I was found early morning in Brockwell Park, which is in South London. And Brockwell Park was opposite my mother's partner's work. She was a senior probation officer. And I would sit there every day in the park instead of going to school all day. And I did that for many months. So back then, safeguarding wasn't really a thing. I think I was noticed, my absence was noticed, but nothing was really done about it until one day, fortunately, as I say, after years of abuse from both of them, I was passed by a police officer on his way to work on what they call an early turn. So he was going in early morning. He saw me. He spotted me sitting on the same bench when he returned from work. He approached me and I legged it. I ran from him as fast as I could. He caught me because he was called PC Goodfellow. That was his real name. He caught me. I went under his arm, and then I went to the police station. They used to have one in the park in the old days. This was back in whatever it was, 1977 or something. And that started my first day really under the protection of what was the police and then social services. I went to various children's homes for short periods of time, and ended up in Grafton Close in the summer of, that was 1977. And unfortunately, Grafton Close wasn't a safe children's home, quite the contrary. And for all children living in Grafton Close or staying in Grafton Close, it was a horrendous place, and linked with another building in called Elm House, which was linked with a lot of paedophile activity. And Grafton Close was like a sweet shop in many ways for predators. And being 7.5, I was the youngest there probably by half. I mean, I think the other child was probably 13, 14. And my abuse started the first day I was there. I had three failed foster attempts where my behavior was considered incompatible with living with other children because I was traumatized. And so my early years were quite uncomfortable, disappointing, and like the other guys, we've all got a tell different, and yet highlighted the kind of highlighted what was happening back in the 70s. And it was a particularly unpleasant time for all of us in care and all of us in the children's home, not just me, to be really clear about that. I remained a ward of court until I was 18. I lived with my grandmother for a number of years. I went back, interestingly, to stay with my mother. I still can't wrap my head around that now, why I was put back in care of my mother. There were attempts at there were attempts of getting rid of me. My mother and her partner made attempts at getting rid of me, which fortunately failed. I had a very strong grandmother, emotionally strong, I hasten to add, little Welsh lady, who recognized the bruising and other scars I have, and eventually became my guardian. And she was a remarkable woman, saved my life without a shadow of a doubt. So that was, forgive me for going on, that was the early part of my tale, and lots of mischief as well, which I won't go into. I'll probably incriminate myself. No murders, all right, nothing really serious. And to cut a very long story short, I decided, because I was interested in human behavior, I would become a therapist, which I did, qualified about 25 years ago. And I have worked with remarkable people over the years. I worked for the NHS for a period, which demonstrated, certainly within the area I worked in, the way not to do things. I set up a charity, which is still going on now, and supporting arguably some of the most challenging people, the people who are often experience adverse childhood experience, ACEs, and lots of trauma and lots of abuse, people who have been given up on, people who've been marginalized, ignored, humiliated. And these are the most remarkable people. They have remarkable tales, remarkable humility. And so I set my service up, and the charity has achieved remarkable things over the last, we became fully operational in 2010. I worked as a civilian crisis negotiator with the police. That's what I was called. The reality is it was just getting alongside people who were really struggling and who were acutely unwell in many cases, and in many cases had been let down. I'm now working on something which is around suicide prevention specifically, working on the IMV model, which was introduced by Professor Rory O'Connor. So I'm working on something now, it's a digital platform to help predict when people, or if people are likely to develop suicidal thinking or ideation. Have lots of interest from NHS trusts at the moment, but struggling to find this early research and development funding. This evening, I was tempted not to join this podcast on the way here. I saw my son sitting in the kitchen, and I thought this is for him and for all little people who don't have a voice, and maybe the inner child, that little bit of me that I haven't quite got to terms with yet. So it's very much about, I mean, I'm sure I share this for all of us. We're all doing our own repair work, but we're also standing up for the people who don't have a voice, because if they're not helped to find their voice, it will lead to self-harm, suicide, homelessness, families being torn apart. It's incredibly important for men to talk. Men do have a voice. Yes, notwithstanding some men are emotionally inarticulate. Not all men, some men. But this movement, these amazing people, including Andy, who isn't here today, we are all aligned in our fervent sort of wish to start something incredible for people, for men to be okay. And I remember, this is another thing, just lastly, I remember the most beautiful day in Cornwall with the sun coming through. I live near an oak tree, oak trees outside, and the sun coming through and my children laughing. And I didn't have any joy in that moment. Everything was grey, and in many respects it remains that way, if I'm honest. And that needs to be changed. And the earlier you can intervene, the more opportunity you have to make days sunny for people to really enjoy life and prosper, rather than sit with this for the duration of their childhood and adulthood. So that's all I want to say. Forgive me for waffling on, but I felt that last bit important.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you have a website or social media where people could connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn and ARC Health, so archealth.org.uk would bring people to the door and share something about what we're doing at the moment.
Thank you so much for sharing. You're so welcome. And I'd like to pass the mic back to Naomi. I'd like to maybe sort of lay the foundations of some facts and statistics regarding male child sexual abuse, especially in the UK and the US. Whatever you've been able to sort of dig up, Naomi, I think this is a really important part of the puzzle too. So I'll turn it over to you, and maybe you could talk a little bit about some of these facts and statistics.
I think the facts and statistics are actually truly shocking. So we know in the UK that, well, there's an estimated 500,000 children will experience sexual abuse during the next 12 months. And we know that boys are at least a third of those victims. In fact, it's the figures may actually be much more equal, because when you look at the Child Protection Register, which is a massive underestimate of the amount of children that will experience abuse during childhood, boys are registered at roughly the same rate as girls for sexual abuse, and they're more likely to be physically abused than girls are during childhood. So we know that boys, on the face of it, look like a third of victims. Now in America, there are 42 million survivors of childhood sexual abuse, and it's estimated that around 14 million men in America have experienced sexual abuse before the age of 18. And I think, there are a number of reasons why it's hard for men to speak up, but I think one of those figures is also that 38% of the abusers of boys are female when it comes to America. And actually, that is such a big taboo to talk about the sexual abuse by women. So yeah, the facts really are truly shocking. We know also that males take much longer to disclose their abuse. On average, we're looking at sort of 15 to 20 years before men are able to speak up about what's happened to them. And that's statistically significantly longer than it takes females to speak up. We know that boys are much more likely to experience penetrative sexual abuse. So girls are more likely to be abused by a peer, so another child. Boys are more likely to be abused by an adult who's in a position of trust. And certainly when I worked in the prison, I was quite horrified to start hearing about, the sports coaches, teachers, babysitters, the whole array of people, but a lot of adults. And often once somebody's been abused once, they're obviously they're vulnerable to further instances of sexualization and sexual abuse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but it's amazing. Even for me as a podcaster, I remember when I first started my podcast, the first couple of years I got asked all the time, why don't you ever feature men on your podcast? And I was like, I literally haven't had a single man reach out to me. Maybe that's because I'm a female podcaster, but I really think that it was a deeper issue than that. And it was something that really perplexed me too, because in these stories females were telling, there were often men or male siblings that were involved with the abuse alongside them. And I'm thinking, where are all the men at to speak up? And so I wanted to ask the rest of you other barriers potentially, whether as a child being told specific things, or as an adult, the societal barriers or emotional barriers being a male survivor. What types of barriers did you guys experience when wanting to share your story, or even after you did, the response that society or people that you were closest to you gave you?
Yeah, I could start with that one. Yeah, so for me, there was really intense threats against my life and against my siblings and against my family at large. So there was severe threats, often reinforced by physical acts, such as me being strangled quite harshly, to reinforce the physical threat that I was under. I think there's something for men as well, just the nature of the act that men tend to be subjected to creates its own particular type of shame and its own particular type of horror. So there's something about how it would happen that I think just really deeply almost echoes, or the ramifications of that in the psyche of the man is again a huge source of shame, and goes very much against your idea of manhood, your idea of being a sovereign, powerful, upstanding man. But yeah, I think for me, just the intense conditioning, the intense threats against my life, and the threats against those that I love. It's very often, it can be a pet, a sibling, another parent, that can be threatened and be done in a very convincing way that makes the child genuinely fear that somebody would be killed if they disclosed.
Does anybody else want to add on to that?
I can come in a little bit. I would put two things forward. One, really hard to sort of quantify. It's sort of social. It may be deeper than that. Naomi would know a lot better than me in that. But on the whole, men ignore things anyway. You look at health. Men tend not to go to see a GP, see a doctor, until it's too late for all sorts of things, because they hope they'll be all right. They hope it'll go away. They don't like the idea. I mean, I didn't like the idea of having something wrong with me. I couldn't believe there was. I wouldn't believe it until, well, literally, I sort of swelled up like a Michelin man. I thought, oh, there is something wrong. But I wasn't going to accept it. And I think that's something deep inside all men, to the point that it may be actually sort of part of our psychology. I'm not going to speak on Naomi's behalf on that, but there's something deep down. And then for people like me, there's the added barrier of privilege. I was lucky, and there's no way on this earth I'm going to try and say that I wasn't. I was hugely privileged. I was born into a wealthy background. So my parents could pay for me to have the best education. They did pay for me to have the best. How can I complain? And that goes not just with elite schools, as I went to. It's similarly people who are sort of selected at a young age to be given special training in gymnastics or in football or whatever else. They're lucky. Socially, I mean, they are fortunate, and in society they're considered lucky because people can put forward, hundreds of other people who would have liked to have been selected and they weren't. So, put up and shut up with whatever goes with it. That's the price of privilege.
Joe or Rafael, do either of you have anything to add from personal experience?
Yeah, Raf, do you want to go first?
Sorry, Emma, can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, I was asking barriers to speaking out, and Naomi had mentioned it's staggering the amount of male to female ratio of survivors speaking out. And I was asking all of you about your own experiences. What are some barriers that you personally experienced while wanting to speak out, whether it was a belief that your boys can't cry, that you were told whenever you're little, a pressure from society of they're going to make fun of me, or even like in Daniel's case, I'm being threatened if I speak out, and so I can't for my own safety. Did you come across any barriers yourself?
I did. As I said, when you in state homes or you come from a rough neighbourhood, it's shame. A lot of it is shame. You don't want you're ashamed to telling people, right? Because you've dated, as you said, you get looked down upon, or like a second-class citizen or something like that. It has been a struggle, coming out. The only reason why I came out because I've seen it on TV. One of my children's was on TV, and I joined the inquiry to have a voice. Like they promised us a voice, and I wanted to do some good. I thought my voice would help change, and it's always been like that. But growing up, until that point, that's when I came out. It was about 15 years ago. Growing up into that, it's hard. It's hard. You can't explain to people. My wife, she knew about it, but we don't disclose everything. And then it's mental health, and there's a lot of problems going with you have to go through. There's a lot of hurdles, a lot of dark places. But when you did come out, when I found it, when I did start speaking out about it, a lot of my pressures went away. A lot of it's went away, and I just go out there now and advocate and talk to people, inspire other people to speak out. Because when you do speak out, it does help. I think it's a big therapy when you do speak out. But a lot of it's down to shame. Big boys, we don't want to say anything like that. We get looked down upon, or as it says, everybody says, "Oh, don't want to hear it." It's can you change the subject? There's always an excuse, right? But coming out is the best thing maybe you can do. Any survivor out there, speaking out is the best therapy, and you'll never regret it.
Thank you.
Can I just say as well, Rafael is the most amazing advocate, knocking on the door of the Vatican, really trying to make sure that people do hear his story and hear about what's happened to him. He is amazingly inspirational, globetrotting, sharing his story.
Thanks, Naomi. It's all about awareness with me and Naomi. Right, I love going out and telling people, speaking to people. Right, years ago when I used to speak out, it was all, leave it, I don't want to talk about it. But see now, 15 years later, there has been a change. Only a small change, but it's beginning to get momentum now. Men are speaking out. We're not afraid anymore. And no, it's 2025, but we've got to get that message out there. We have to get that message out there. It's not taboo now. Like, no, we can speak. We've all got a voice. And there's so many survivors out there. There's so many that I meet. Like, it's unbelievable. Everybody knows a survivor. Like, no, you speak to somebody, oh, my brother or my cousin or my friend. Like, no, there's that many of us. There's that many men now. And as I say, there's 150,000 boys get abused every year. Now, my abuse happened in 1969. I'm 66 now. So how many are they, my age, men who have mental health problems, serious mental health problems? As you said, Toby says, I don't go to the doctors. Like, no, I get emails off the doctors regular or a hospital. Like, men do things like that. Oh, I'll leave it. And as you said, the cancer scare. Like, no, men seem to shun that as well. But the only thing we can do is do this, bring out awareness and get everybody on our side, because we have a big problem here. There's a massive problem here. 150,000 children, boys a year, and nobody cares about us. No, and that's no health. I've been through it all. I've seen so many people. You just tick the boxes, and things have got to change. Things have to change, and it's got to change from the top. It has to change from the government, and the government are taking on notice of us. It's all about women and girls. Yes, I agree with that. Give them the biggest platform, women and girls. But they never mention us. Like, no, and lately, with all this is going on in the news, I feel a little bit hot about this. Like, no, they're making boys and men out like we're bad. Like, we ain't bad. We just want a little bit of the platform. Please mention us. Like, no, Jess Phillips and Yvonne Cooper, like the Home Secretary, they mention us. They don't never mention us. It's all women and girls, which I agree with you, 100%, women and girls, but just keep a wee bit of our platform. But if you get no media attention, nothing, if we talk about it, it's just closed doors. They're closing the doors on us. Like, no, it's the same as all these big organisations. They don't want to know. Nobody wants to know about boys. We have to make a stand and make them listen to us. Make them listen.
Amen, Rafael. And Joe, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think for men, often feels like there's just a dead end in terms of the thoughts often arise in men, I'm sure, as they did with me, where to take this information, where to take this feeling, these thoughts, these experiences. If you go to men, it can be quite a challenging experience. Often there's an awkwardness to it. It's kind of how do we expect people to respond? Are they going to reciprocate that kind of empathy? Well, only if they're equipped with empathy and can demonstrate empathy. And often, I'm not saying all men, but often men don't have that that equipment, as it were, to provide a response that's going to validate how I feel, how we feel. And then if we take it to our partners, the view of taking it to my wife, as I was saying to Naomi before, you know, it's not a particularly sexy subject. How are we going to be? How it's that kind of fantasy of how will I be responded to, and how will my wife, my female partner, feel about me? I'm supposed to be the protector, the head of the household. You know, I can bench press 140 kilos, and now that's my personal best, just showing off. But I mean, you know, what happened? I don't know about you, Dan, but we'll come on to that another time. But actually, what happens when I disclose that? Am I going to be viewed as a lesser man? Am I going to be viewed as too vulnerable? Or how much detail do I give before it becomes something I can't ever go back from? Once it's out there, I can't retract it. It's out there. So there's kind of, highlights the importance of this group and this movement, you know, to use your term at the beginning, Emma, you know, if we can't go to men, we go to women because we feel it's a safer space, but actually we should be able to go to men, and men should be able to go to men because that's where you have, I think, that, you know, a real sense of understanding, because the experiences are reciprocated. That's what I'm looking for. The experiences are understood because they've experienced them as well. So I think there's lots and lots of barriers aside from organizations as to why we won't speak out. How will we be viewed? And it robs something perhaps of our masculinity, that we're no longer masculine because we've had those experiences. Now, that may be untrue, but it's certainly where I sat with it. And I haven't disclosed half the stuff that I went through because it's unnecessary, but because I don't want to run the risk that I'll never be. And I'm not speaking ill of my wife, just to be really clear. I just don't know how it'll go down, and I don't want to traumatize her. You know, that kind of vicarious trauma. I don't want to traumatize her by telling her why. Where do I go with that? This movement, we can do something with it for everybody. So that's my take on it.
Go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah, can I just expand on a couple of the things that the guys have said?
Please.
Because, you know, I think it was Rafael who said stories about media, male victimisation received less media coverage. Well, in Britain, there was a man who he's estimated to have raped 400 men, which, you know, that is probably the most prolific rapist in Britain, but he raped men, not women. And yet you mention the name of Reynard Siniga, which is him, to the average person in the UK, and they don't even know, you know, it got kind of like a couple of inches in the press, whereas if he'd raped 400 women, he'd have been all over the front cover for weeks and weeks. And just yesterday, actually, a British comedian, David Walliams, also wrote children's books, lots and lots of children's books, has been dropped by his publisher because of inappropriate behaviour with women. But actually there are lots of videos of him sexually assaulting young men, 16, 17 and 18, on the stage of his comedy shows, and that was happening sort of 10 or 15 years ago. So the media does play some part in perhaps not picking up on male victimisation, something really uncomfortable about males who've been abused. I think societal expectations dictate that all sexual contact for males is perceived as welcome. So when you have abuse by teachers, female teachers, an attractive female teacher, the kind of comments that people make is, oh, you know, you should be so lucky, rather than recognizing that it's an abuse of power, there is abuse happening there, and how confusing that is for a young man or young boy. I think males traditionally, they prefer bonding centered around doing rather than analysing and discussing relationships, as women are more prone to do. So they might even have the opportunity to reflect on relationships or recognise they've experienced abuse in the way that females would. And one of the things that we found in the prison project that I worked on was that at the start, when men came into the project, it was believed that sort of about, I think 10 or 12% of them had been sexually abused during childhood, which is obviously too many in itself. But actually, rather than ask, were you sexually abused during childhood, we would ask, how old were you when you first had sex? How old was your sexual partner? And then you'd have stories, you know, men would be saying, well, when I was 12, I had a sexual relationship with a 27-year-old. Well, obviously, that's not a sexual relationship. That's abuse. So I think there's, you know, something about how we frame these kind of questions as professionals when we're meeting with men and asking about their histories. And then somebody else, again, I think Rafael highlighted sort of institutional sexism in the statutory agencies regarding male victims. So males are frequently painted in the role of aggressor, but we know that a third of domestic violence victims are men. And within Britain, we have this ludicrous situation where we have a strategy called the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, and male victims of domestic violence and abuse are dealt with as if they're women. So, you know, how Joe mentioned emasculation, you know, how can we encourage males to come forward and speak about sexual abuse, physical abuse, if they're going to be dealt with under a strategy labelled violence against women and girls? And we know that mental health professionals are at least as biased as other sections of the population. So when these biases are there within the population, we can expect that men are not going to be dealt with well. And I suppose just one last point to make is that boy victims are sometimes made to have sex with other children as children, and they're made to do that. And that really messes with people's heads and can create the perception that of the self as an abuser, and this sense of guilt that then happens then makes it very difficult for that to be confronted, makes it much easier to push that to one side and avoid dealing with it. And yet we are talking about children in all of this.
Thank you for that. That's just shocking to hear some of that, and then to hear from all of you. No wonder why men don't come forward. There's societal pressures, there's threats from family, there's limiting beliefs that you're told as a child from parents and authority figures about what masculinity should be. And it's really sad how embedded that can get through adulthood, and the barriers of communication that can happen as a result, especially with traumatic abuse like what all you have gone through. And so in all of your opinions, whoever wants to speak on this, Dr. Naomi, you as well, how do we overcome this? We have more and more survivors every day coming forward wanting to speak out, or just waking up to their abuse or becoming aware of their abuse and wanting to heal from it. And so many are still harboring their pain and keeping it inside and not knowing what to do with it. What do we need to support males on the other side of speaking out? And then maybe Rafael had touched on what happened to him as a result of speaking out, that his worst case scenarios didn't happen, that it was this beautiful journey opened up for him and a purpose emerged from it. And I wondered if any of you felt that on the other side of it, and maybe you could offer some encouraging words to other men who are facing those same fears and barriers that many of you felt before you spoke out. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that we change things is by doing what we're doing right now. So as Rafael was saying, the act of speaking out is in and of itself liberating. So to speak out, there's all this pressure, external, internal, not to talk, not to share your story, threats, societal conditioning, disinterest, all these reasons. But actually to speak out and to break those chains really is a liberating and empowering experience. You do need to be careful about who you share it with, especially initially. And there's obviously recommendations to do that first and foremost with a professional. But actually, in my opinion, who is very good to talk to is another survivor. So the more men that speak out, the more there are ears that are able to hear someone else's story. So there is a huge onus on all of us men, brothers, who may be watching this, just to come to the place where you can speak about your story, because you can then become a conduit, a listening ear for another man who has likewise gone through something terrible and who doesn't yet know how to share this heavy weight that is upon his heart. So that's one I would champion.
Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, I think when we look at as we've already discussed, the complexities and the layers of difficulty in accessing support and where to go and how to do it and who to share it with, to some extent we almost need, and perhaps on the back of what we are setting up at the moment, we almost need almost like something like Samaritans or Childline, but specifically for men, to take them straight through to an area that they know is safe. And as Dan's saying, where we have people who are skilled in active listening, or whether we're able to ultimately signpost people to get initially professional support, because disclosure doesn't come as just or isn't just on a whim. It will carry potentially enormous baggage, fear, and emotional distress, and actually that has to be held. And to my mind, having a professional able to do that, I think is really important. So I think that's I think that would be an area, for us to perhaps consider in time, that we create a safe area, whether it's a phone number, whether it's a website, it doesn't really matter. But what we do need is to really highlight that it's a safe area for men and men only. And because I think it's work, Childline has done, the Esther Ranson in the early days, I think, has done absolute wonders, and notwithstanding it's had its criticism over the years, but it's done remarkable things. And wouldn't it be wonderful if men could be afforded something of a similar kind to channel those concerns, those fears, but fundamentally they know that wherever they end up, it's safe. It's going to be an area that is okay, no matter what they say, how they say it, whether they want to sob, whether they want to speak, articulately about the experiences, but it's a place for men. And we don't have that. And the problem with mental health services, and Naomi will know this, mental health services generally work in silos. It's one of my biggest gripes in mental health care, and I've banged on about it for years. There are so many wonderful organizations, but people don't know about each other. They haven't heard of organizations, and so men and other people, for that matter, really struggle. So I think it's about good marketing. It's about, as we build this movement, we have to ultimately be looking at, okay, how do we support people's disclosures, those initial disclosures, and what happens next. So it's not just the initial disclosure, it's the support thereafter. So that needs to be very carefully considered. But I think we have, with these guys and with Andy as well, we have so much energy, drive, determination, experience, and heart for this movement. And, I mean, Naomi, I don't know if Naomi can be an honorary man, but she absolutely should be. The work and her heart for this, and her effort and enthusiasm and love for it is remarkable. So I guess what I'm saying is we have, I think, everything we need to really create a safe space for men. I think that's what we need.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry.
Go on, Naomi, you go first.
Well, I just wanted to add, I mean, there is, Joe's right. I think what people can access through their National Health Service, which in Britain obviously is free, but I think for any survivor of abuse, it's actually very, very patchy. Unless your distress is matched with a lot of behavioural concerns which evoke panic amongst the statutory agencies. So if you're suicidal, for instance, then you might find that the NHS can become more interested. But if you're basically coping on the surface with life and not threatening other people or yourself, it can actually be very difficult to access the kind of support that people need. There are some agencies of charities within the UK, and we have collated a list of resources for anyone, certainly in the UK, who's speaking up. But again, it is quite patchy, the coverage. There is one national organisation for male survivors, but certainly there are a lot fewer organisations trying to meet the needs of male survivors, so there definitely is more need. Sorry, Toby, thank you.
Yeah, no, I could sum up what we need most of all in one word, which is money. We have seen and heard now for approaching 2 years, come April, it will be 2 years. We have been trying to set up exactly that. We specialise in people from independent education, and especially boarding. We would love to do more. We can't afford. What we didn't know at the beginning was how many people, just from our very tiny niche, we would come forward. I mean, just this last 12 months, since January 25, we've had more than 3,000 people come to us wanting our free help. There are 3 of us directors. I think over the year we've maybe managed to raise about £8,000. The rest of it has been voluntary, and So money is a huge problem. It is necessary. We need money to do what's needed. And what we need to do is very much needed. It's getting the belief in the high up places where we could get government funding or big things like the national lottery funding. But unfortunately, for my particular niche, the mixture of privilege and being a man are two big disadvantages. For all of us here, our gender is a major disadvantage. It simply isn't as yet socially acceptable or aware, or there isn't sufficient awareness about it to be sufficiently sort of justifiable for limited resources to be spent on us. And I think that's our biggest hurdle to get past if we actually want to get where we want to go. We're going to be doing it on next to nothing, which I'm sure we've all got the energy and the time to do it. But are we big enough? Is it enough? It'd be so much easier if we could get some help financially. But that's what I would put it down to largely.
Can I just comment there? Because you're right, Toby. Money does obviously count, but one of the things that's been really beautiful actually about working with all of you guys is being in a WhatsApp group and hearing and noticing how you support each other and lift each other up. That is really, really powerful. You guys didn't even know each other a few months ago. You've met once in the flesh, and yet I witness amazing camaraderie, support, really beautiful interactions, which I think men get bad press. Where the assumption is that women can organise together and do that kind of support. People often think that men can't do that, and you guys prove that wrong. And I think one of the things that we are planning for springtime, which will take some money, but is to try and have a conference called What Was Hidden, and it is about trying to grow a community, so trying to build on the momentum of these 5 men, Andy, as well as the 4 that have joined us today, to try and spread that sense of positive connection and support, camaraderie and inspiration, so that people can see that if they speak up, they're not alone. And actually that bit doesn't take funds. So obviously we want to leverage that ability to do that with, and make it more powerful. But you guys have already donated so much by just being willing to donate your faces and your stories and show to other men that actually speaking up, as Rafael said, it's liberating. So yes, thank you.
That's so incredible. Do any of you want to touch on sort of that spiritual, emotional aspect of connecting with other men? I think that's another thing. Men are afraid to sort of share their stories. They're also afraid to connect. What has that done for you? Whoever wants to maybe add on to what Naomi said.
Yeah, I could go again. That's okay.
Yeah.
In my experience, there is a quality of holding and of support that I can get from my fellow man that is really hard to get anywhere else. So in the steadfastness and the compassion and the tenderness that a man can hold and express, actually it can be exactly what you need as a male survivor, to know that your brother has your back, that he believes you, that he believes in you, that he is sorry for this that happened to you, and that he has faith in you. So I've got a huge amount of faith in men generally. You've got initiatives like Andy's Man Club and other initiatives like this where men are getting together and they're talking and they're sharing about their problems. And actually, I think men are much more capable than society at large tends to give us credit for. And like all of the guys here, like I could spill my guts to, and I could tell my story to, and I know they would be there for me. And I would say for anyone watching this is, look, there is an onus on you as a survivor or as somebody that is interested in this topic. You've got to educate yourself on not only the phenomena itself, but also what it means to be an active listener, what it means to be compassionate, what it means to be caring and to care. And the more we can do this, I think it's really possible for change to increasingly come. So I'm hugely optimistic. Hugely optimistic.
Anybody want to add?
Sorry. No, I'm always out when I'm out. I'm always out selling my books. I speak a lot, men. As I said, when I'm selling my books, I've got to discuss what my book's all about. And men are listening, you know, and it's good to talk. They are definitely listening. No, I speak to loads of them from all walks of life, and they do want to listen. And this is what I like doing, because I like going out in the front line, speaking to them, the homeless, shopkeepers, accountants. I speak to everybody. I've sold my books to many people, and over 400 books I've sold, like by myself. Going, sign books, going out to, maybe I've been to the Vatican. Oh, the Vatican twice. Sold 7 books in the Vatican, St. Peter's Square. Been to Berlin, Spain, all over Europe. Well, not all over Europe. London, Birmingham, Santander. I've been Poland, Germany. I've been France, Belgium. I went to Belgium when the Pope was there. When he addressed the survivors, one of his hand-picked survivors. So me and other survivors went over there, and I sold my books everywhere I go. And it's mostly men who are buying my book. And it's good to talk, and they're listening. And they're listening to spread the word, awareness. And I enjoy it. That's we're all unique. We've all got a part to play in us. And I think that's what I do. I specialise going there in awareness on the front line and talking to people, and I like it. And people are listening now. Men, women, youngsters, everybody, they're all listening. I can feel it. Not many people are annoyed at me with my subject when I show them my book and tell them our experiences and what we're doing. They're getting applauded. We are getting applauded, but you've got to speak about it. If you speak about it, they will listen.
Thank you, Rafael. Joe?
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, the biggest connector, I think, for people and for men is sharing vulnerability. I mean, vulnerability is such an enormous connector, because we're all ultimately vulnerable, and that reaches down and into absolutely everything and everyone. And I think sharing vulnerability creates a very special relationship, because it says that it's safe. I get it. I hear you. I really hear you right from in here. And I think one of the saddest things of all this is unless people are reminded of what they've achieved post abuse, and often people develop remarkable empathy and kindness and compassion for other people, and that hasn't just come out of nowhere. It's often born of these experiences, the experiences that they've had, the abuse that they've experienced. What makes people sometimes more attentive to their partners or to their children or to care at a really deep level is the abuse. But left unchallenged, that abuse is left in some dark, horrible corner of the mind, rather than extracted and said, look, you have experienced that, but you are a far more potent human being. You are a far more caring, considerate, loving, empathic individual because of that. So let's look at, I'm not saying, hey, let's celebrate all the horrible things, but let's actually look at those experiences and how they've influenced and helped us develop skills and attitude, and look at where we are today, us, because of those experiences. And hey, I mean, there's probably lots of people around the world who would love to be doing what we're doing, but here we are, and now we have, I think, a responsibility to do something with it. And I think I can only speak for myself, but listening more intently to my son and what he experiences is as a result of my experiences. And so to some extent, there's a gratitude in there as well. So for me, I look at, one of the books I always band on about is not like these other folk here. I haven't written a book, but the book I do love is Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl, looking at purpose and meaning. These experiences, all of this stuff has led to this place, and we've got to celebrate that, and we've got to do something with it. And if we're left to think that we are just victims and these horrible, sordid experiences, this dark, miserable stuff that went on, if that's all there is to it, then of course people are going to be miserable and upset and depressed. But actually, if you can take a spin on it and say, okay, yeah, but what have you become as a result of it? And there's amazing stuff. These guys, and Andy as well, they're just amazing, really, truly amazing people. And I think we have to celebrate that. And we need to remind all men everywhere that there's something incredibly special about them and their trajectory. And this is only the beginning. So I'm a great advocate in looking at the positive on this, and not to dwell in the house of misery because it's pointless. That's my penny's worth.
And I wanted to turn over to Toby. Do you want to share a little bit about what it's done for you? I'd love to hear kind of the spiritual, emotional healing that being a part of a group has been for you, Toby.
Most directly, it was forming Seen and Heard, to be honest, because I guess I'm a kind of doer. I mean, my reaction to any situation is to try and alter it, to do something about it. I tend to be a practical sort of person. So, it rains a lot, the house floods, I start trying to sweep the water out and work out how to make a dam to stop it coming in and things. I don't sit, I'm not a natural sort of sitter and moaner. I quite enjoy the excitement of a disaster and doing something about it in a perverse sort of way. So, yeah, for me, Seen and Heard was was my natural reaction to using the sort of energy which came from the sort of the growing anger about the sort of discovery of my past, as it were. And so, yeah, that was how I focused it. I found these two other great guys, Chris and Andrew, who we formed Seen and Heard. I had no idea when we began, none of us did, how much work it would take, how much it would intrude on our lives, how much less time we'd have for, earning money, doing all the things that we normally would be doing. We had no notion, or if there was anyone who wanted it, let alone 3,000 people in a year. I mean, it's amazing. And so that's brought with it loads of other activity. So you could say, I've escaped through activity. It's a kind of escapism, but it isn't, because as the others have said, by doing something, you're turning something bad into something good and making it of value and worthwhile. And it doesn't make it all right. It doesn't make it go away, but it gives it value, positive value, which is much, for me personally, is much, much better than sitting in a dark room and wringing my hands and howling to the moon or something. It's made it already worthwhile. Hopefully I've got many years ahead of me and it'll become more worthwhile, because we're going to crack this. And I've been unbelievably privileged just to have had Naomi come along to Seen and Heard and ask for somebody from a posh, privileged background. My other two directors were glad to push me under the bus because they said, you talk too much, Toby. You go in fact, they did it because they said, it's only silent photography, so it'll teach you something. So I sort of fell into it. And the whole of my probably the whole of my life, really, I've sort of, things have happened. I've fallen into the next bit of my life. And this is like the rest of it. It's the next phase of my life. It's a challenge, but it's a fantastic challenge, an enjoyable challenge. Despite the nature of the work, I'm really enjoying, having fun, working with all these other great people and meeting the great people who come to us either to help us or to seek our help. It all enriches my life. So yeah, I mean, I can almost sit here now and say I'm glad about all the negative things that happened 50 years ago, because if they hadn't, I wouldn't be doing any of this, and that's great.
That's true.
I don't want to really talk for him, but I do want to keep him in the conversation because he's been really important in terms of this project happening. And Toby, I just want to say to you, I'm pretty sure that Andy would say to you, there's no such thing as coincidence, just a coincidence. And I think the synchronicity is incredible.
It's really amazing how all of you have turned your pain into purpose. As Joe was saying about Man's Search for Meaning, that's a book that's near and dear to my heart too. It totally switched the way that I look at life, how I look at struggle. And, you know, that is ultimately sort of the light switch that we're trying to turn on for other men and survivors, is to help transmute that pain that's just harboring inside into something beautiful. And I think the irony of some of the comments that most of you have made, including Dr. Naomi from her own research, about how speaking about abuse could potentially emasculate a man. When I look at all of you, I see the complete opposite. I see protectors. I see the most strong men who are coming out and actually physically speaking on behalf of young boys, of women, of children, when most other men are just going about their daily lives, working a 9 to 5. You don't see most men doing what you're doing at all. When they have no trauma that they're carrying, they could easily be out advocating and being protectors themselves. And I see the most manly, masculine, incredible men sitting in front of me right now. So I think that it's an incredible irony that, you know, we think that talking about trauma could possibly emasculate, when in fact you guys are saving lives, you're changing lives, you're getting another man to want to live another day after seeing what's possible through all of you, you know. So it's really, really incredible just hearing your testimonies and even just trying to picture all of you as little children, what you went through. You know, nobody would ever know talking to you today. And I know not every day is easy. I know that the struggle is ongoing, the struggle evolves, it doesn't just stop. You don't just heal one day and it's all done. You know, but seeing how you guys have been able to transmute that into something purposeful, to take that struggle and say, how can I change somebody's life with this? How can I make the world better? What can I create with this pain? It's really an inspiration. I think it's the lesson that we need to give to other men, that you're not just stuck with that. You can transmute it. And all of you are living, breathing examples and role models of that. And so I thought I'd loop this around. I could talk to you guys for just hours and hours and hours. This is just such a deep topic, but I really want to get back to you inside the boys club and sort of tie this back, and maybe Dr. Naomi could talk about this, and all of you as well. But I'd love to know sort of, you know, what this project wants to do with these testimonies, with this mission, with this really big subject. If you're looking for other people to get involved, if there's other male survivors who would want to get in touch with you, how they can do that, sort of kind of the big picture of the solution aspect of this, and, you know, what Inside the Boys Club hopes to do and is doing for other men and male survivors.
I think it was directed at you, Naomi.
Directed at you. This person.
Yeah, any of you could answer.
I'm very happy to offer something, but I do think you have all been instrumental in shaping up where this goes next. So, you know, I was involved in getting the visibility of the issue out there, but I think what's really emerged from our collective conversations has been this wish to create a community. And as a sort of a temporary measure, we have a Substack called Inside the Boys Club, and actually if people subscribe to that, that's a way for us to be able to notify people of the next steps. Dan's busy making us a website for what was hidden, I believe, Dan, because the next step is to plan to hold a conference for male survivors and to gradually build on that. We want to create this space for perfect, thank you, and to enable people to connect and appreciate that they're not alone.
And if there's men or advocates, other healthcare providers that want to get involved, whether in the UK or otherwise, or other men who want to share their testimonies and are feeling really inspired, what's the best way to get a hold of this this particular project in particular? Do you guys have a point person or a website, an email? That's best.
At the moment we don't. So the best way at the moment is either connect with any of us on social media. We've had quite a lot of people reaching out on social media. Some of our email addresses are on there, and so I think each of us has probably had quite a bit of contact emails sent to us. Like I say, people can comment on the Substack. But yeah, please connect with us on whether it be on LinkedIn and X. We're probably better on those places than on Instagram, but maybe I'm talking as an old fuddy-duddy, and maybe some of you are much more active in other places. Dan, you wanted to?
Yeah,
I was going to suggest a fax. I'm that old. They can just send a fax. They don't exist anymore, do they?
I think they abolished faxes about 2 years ago.
Dear.
no, if I can just say the name of the website. So the project is developing into an organization called What Was Hidden. Is that correct? What Was Hidden. So the website is going to be whatwashidden.org. So we're in the process of building that now. So that will be up in the next few weeks. So that will be a nice centralized place to get in touch with all of us. So whatwashidden.org, and there will be a contact form on there that works. So that will be a nice centralized place, and the Substack is a great centralized place to get in touch. But to answer your question, Emma, we want, yes, male survivors, come forward. Brothers, like, we need you. We need you to address this problem. Other healthcare providers, psychologists, if you are inspired by this in any way, come forward and reach out to us in whatever way that you can. We are going to be running a yearly event, which is a gathering for male survivors and for supporters and for professionals to gather to share stories, to share best healing practices, and to inspire and uplift and spread the good work more widely. So it's really exciting what's going to be happening. The organization will be called What Was Hidden. We're probably going to do it as some kind of charity, I believe. Joe, is that right? So we're going to be setting it up as a charity, and Inside the Boys Club is really a media campaign to raise awareness that will be under the media section on the website. So,
do you want to add anything to that, Joe? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say as well, you know, we as Dan was saying, we definitely want people. Men who've experienced abuse, healthcare professionals, people with any interest in it or a curiosity about it, but also people who are willing to consider funding it. You know, as Toby was saying, there are channels once you become a charity. I run a charity, so there are specific funding opportunities that exist as a charity that don't otherwise exist without being a charity. But there might be people who just have a heart for the work we're doing. Perhaps they've had experiences and they work very hard, and they're in a position now to consider supporting the movement. So it's really open to anybody. Fundamentally, we want to reach as many people as possible, and you know, it doesn't have to be just UK. This isn't a UK only problem. It's a massive worldwide problem. So if there are people across the pond or elsewhere, Emma, you know, elsewhere across the pond there, you know, that's fine as well. We just want to support as many people as we can. But if people are curious about it and what's it about, and they want to be part of it, then just reach out. And I think the people who are on LinkedIn here, we're open to having, you know, messages. It's fine. We just want to. We just want people to know they're not alone. That's the bottom line. And it sounds cliched, but it's absolutely the case. People do feel isolated and alone, and we want to change that. Toby, yes, over to you.
Yeah, you can contact me at the sort of email address is toby@seenheard.org.uk. Just to say, we have people indeed who use our free online services, people who come to our support groups, which happen weekly and again free of charge. from elite schools in Australia, in America. So you wouldn't be alone if you did want to come and look at our site, see what's going on, and yeah, help basically. Anyone who's interested, anybody who's interested in doing various bits of sort of research, that kind of thing, developing the facts and figures, because that, I think Joseph will tell you, will agree with me, that the more sort of information we have, the more credible our efforts to raise money from sort of charitable support places are, if you can demonstrate a need. And the more factual that is, the better than just saying, oh, think we feel it. So anyone involved in research, that kind of thing, also,
Definitely.
Please contact us.
Or clinicians who want to improve their ability to enable men to tell their stories and respond in a sensitive way that doesn't shut the man down. Yeah, please get in touch. We'd be really glad to support you in doing that.
Even psychiatrists. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I can. What we can do, guys, is I can get an email address set up so it's ready to go. So what I suggest is we have an email address, survivors@whatwashidden.org. So that I'll get that up and running tomorrow. So by the time this goes live, we'll have an email address centralized that people can contact us on. So sorry for being a bit slow with that, but survivors@whatwashidden.org. Get in touch.
Is it .org.uk?
.org.
Roger that.
Such a star, Daniel. Thank you.
The biggest star. Rafael, did you want to add anything? I saw your hand come up at one point.
No, it's just good to talk. Because we're getting listened. No, I just love talking about it when I'm out. Explaining to people, inspiring people to come forward and share their stories. Yeah.
It's an honor to get to listen to you and to get to talk to you. And I appreciate all of you coming on today. A couple of you went through your social media. Did anybody else, Dr. Naomi especially, we didn't go over where people can connect with you. Do you want to just share, and I'll have all the information in the show notes?
Yes, that'd be great. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do have a Substack where I've curated resources to help people support their healing journey when they can't afford therapy. So please, if you could share those, that would be brilliant. It's free, and there are some really good stuff in there, which I've magpied from other places.
And then any closing words from any of you guys on things that, anything that you guys wanted to share today before we close up? Go ahead, Daniel.
Buy my book.
Yes! Bye, Raphael.
Thank you, Emma. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for supporting us. Emma's on the show. And this is going to work. Right? No, it has to work. It's got to work. We're making it work. We're so unique. Every one of us have got a different story, and every one of us can put all this together, and it's a bigger picture. There's no five of us. There's six of us. There's Naomi. You would say there's five of us. There's six of us. But thank you, Naomi, for putting all this together. Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Sane and Marius, without whom this wouldn't have happened. Amazingly talented, and to see that there's a really powerful story here, and be able to say with pictures, what perhaps hasn't been able to be easily conveyed with words, and massive gift to donate their time and resources for free, as well as their vision. So thank you.
Daniel, did I see your hand come up?
You did see my hand come up, Emma. I just want to advocate one last time for just speaking out and sharing your story. So any survivor watching this, but just look, it's a weight that you carry. It can be the most horrifying thing in the world to come to speak out about it, but when you do, it is a relief. And I personally believe that if you don't share it, there's a good chance it ends up killing you, whether it's through addiction, through sickness, through mental health, through whatever thing. Like it's like a boil that needs lancing. So the sooner you can lance that boil, the sooner the pressure is relieved, and the sooner you can get support, and the sooner you can hopefully start using your story to help inspire, support, with others as well. So lance that boil, gentlemen, and we're here. You can get in touch with any of us here, and we'll try and support you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, go on then. I just want to add, really on the back of Dan's statement, men listening, be kind to yourself. That's a big thing. There's an enormous weight that we carry. Shame we haven't touched on today, which is an enormous barrier to seeking help. Men, be kind to yourself. And when we get rolling, and we're working as fast as we can, when we get rolling, we will provide safety. We will provide a safe space for men. And we just encourage people to join this movement. But, just have self-compassion, be kind to yourself out there. It's really hard. We recognize that. We're doing everything we can, but you can find some solace with us brothers here, so yeah. And I just want to say, Emma, thank you as well. Thank you for having us all on this evening.
Thanks.
Obviously I haven't met you before. Thank you for your sensitivity, and for your interest in this subject. And equally, I just want to extend my gratitude and love for these guys, and Andy as well. Just an amazing bunch of people. It's kind of, it's nice to find that. It's nice to find that in others. Feels okay. Feels like coming home in a way.
Amen to that. All right, you guys. Well, this was an extremely healing, shocking, and uplifting conversation all at the same time. It's deeply inspiring to see what a group of men who have been through and survived the most heinous, hard things in the whole world can do with that pain, to put it out in the world and to create healing, to create life, to create projects, and to save lives, and it's just, I'm just blown away by all of you. And Dr. Naomi, I can't thank you enough for your part in forming this amazing group, and for your passion, for your research. You can just hear it in your voice, just how much you care. And it takes a really special person to sort of dive into the depths of depravity that survivors like these gentlemen here have went through, and to offer that listening ear and heart, and ultimately you guys are all miracles, and that miracle that we get to experience, seeing what's on the other side of all that, is just beyond inspiring. It brings me to tears every time I hear one of these stories. Just, the capabilities of the human spirit to survive and to get through and to ultimately heal are just unbounded. It's just incredible what we're capable of as humans. And it's sad what's been suppressed and how jaded so many of us are from even wanting to talk about our trauma. So I appreciate all you guys normalizing this for the survivor community, for clinicians, and ultimately for men. We really need to be a voice for these men out here who are feeling really helpless and feeling alone. And so with that, I'm going to have everybody here, and I'll add Andy as well, all of their contact information, their websites, their projects, books, organizations. I'll have the email that Daniel is going to create, so that way you guys can reach out to the team directly if you're a male survivor, if you're a survivor at all and just want to offer support, if you're a clinician of any kind and want to jump on board, if you're any type of support, I would really encourage you guys to please reach out and connect with them, and to go support them on social media, to get their books, to support the organizations, to just reach out with words of encouragement, to connect with them. So I'm going to have all of their links in the show notes. I'll have all my links as well, you guys. We could not do this without you. You guys are the foundation of this movement. Ultimately, if we didn't have you guys on the other side of the screen supporting, we would just be screaming into a black abyss, looking for somebody to listen. So you guys have been and are instrumental in bringing awareness and helping changing the world and saving lives. So thank you all on the other side of the screen for listening and for supporting. So you guys, thank you so much again for tuning in. Bless you all, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.